figuring out retroactively, like what's our actual profitability when we factor in everyone's rates, whether that's salary or hourly rate, measured against their exertion on the project, measured against what we build the client, do we still have healthy profit margin? Like, is this still a profitable business? And I think it's really easy to get lost in the sauce and see that big ticket price on the invoice, but it's something that also informed our pricing matrix, which I know we get questions about on Instagram and in the Facebook group all the time, which is figuring out like, how do you price your services when you do have a robust team that's, again, combination. It's like this, we're all remote, but everyone's kind of involved in the business differently. And you had a really good way of breaking this out in a spreadsheet. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. She's back again. We can't wait to talk to Cody, online business manager extraordinaire. Welcome, Cody.
Hey, thanks for having me on today.
Oh my gosh. You and I talk, I feel like every other day. So this is just, another chit chat for us. But I think we've made a lot of progress since the last time that you were on the podcast. So let the people know what you've been up to, who you've been helping, how you've been helping them.
For sure. So I guess my role with the team at MKW is really about managing the pipeline, making sure clients are onboarded, making sure everyone's happy. And over the past year, we've really added a lot in terms of project management. So helping keep the projects coordinated and on track until we're ready to offboard. So that has really become a little more well-developed over the course of this year. And also with the team, we're starting to get more into strategy, forecasting, and helping really design the style, the type, the pace of business that works well for the team at MKW, which is great. I've also started working with a few other teams. Shout out to AMD Creative, Tipton Creative, Lisa Anglin Creative. And we've really gotten into just some process development and just trying to elevate processes and operations across the board. So I've really kind of fallen into my niche of working with creatives, which is very exciting.
Remind us again your background, because you really only launched your business not too long ago. I remember you being on the team retreat being like, I think I want to quit my corporate job. And I'm like, okay. So really, like, you're still at the beginning of this whole trajectory. Talk to us about what you were doing beforehand and how you ended up doing what you do now.
Absolutely. So from the beginning, I was working in CRM. So for anyone who doesn't know, that's client relationship management. And I was working with I've worked with a few different companies at the national scale here in Canada. So managing a customer database. And I've worked in Salesforce is kind of a big name, Microsoft Dynamics. So those are the types of programs that I'd be working in. But a big part of CRM is mapping that customer experience from start to finish. That'll look different depending on if you're a service-based business, if you're e-commerce, but just making sure that at every point, the touch point with your client is converting, it's giving them the information that they need, and it's just kind of maintaining your funnel. So I've worked in a few different types of environments in CRM on the corporate side for about 7 years. And my business was really born over a brunch because I was working with, for a while, I was working with a friend who is a copywriter, and she was explaining some of the difficulties she was running into with her business. And I was just kind of like, oh, you need a CRM. I'm in a CRM day in, day out. This will help your business so much. And from there, we built a CRM out for her using Dubsado. And then it just kind of escalated from there because it was definitely missing at the point that started in the industry. A lot of solopreneurs, small businesses weren't leveraging something like a CRM. And it was really what they needed to get to the next step in their business.
It's also, as we've found, because you and I feel like are the yin and yang of each other, is that most very, very creative people struggle with systems and with organization. Thankfully, one of the best things I ever did from like day one of my business, thanks to my parents, was invest in a project management tool. So we've been using Basecamp since the beginning of days. But now our tech stack is way more robust than just Basecamp. So talk through the tools that you're using on the MKW Creative Co front, like day in and day out, to track projects, track income of projects. Like, give us the full rundown of what tabs you have open when you sit down to work on our stuff, right?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest recipe for, and this will go for many small businesses, is you need a CRM. It should probably be separate from your project management platform. Those are two different things. You're also going to want, obviously, your accounting software, your QuickBooks. If you've got any forecasting kind of going on in a Google Sheet, For the most part, that's what I would touch for your operations is a CRM, a project management system, and accounting system and a forecasting tool. So that those are the tabs that are open day in, day out. I feel like there's not really a need to overcomplicate it.
Right.
And that's also what I've been finding lately is a lot of people kind of have shiny object syndrome when it comes to not only new tools, new technology, but new features that are getting rolled out. And I've seen a few with clients over the past year, just a few setups that are really overcomplicated for what they need to be. For example, a lot of businesses were wondering, should I invest in a tool like Zapier? So when a client onboards in my CRM system, so that it opens a project for me in a project management system.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's important to do a little bit of a cost benefit analysis here of what's your volume of sales? How often are you having to open a new project? Because realistically, this automation is going to save you 30 seconds if we set it up right. But you're
Totally.
spending $200 a year for the tool to do this. So kind of what's the time saving that you're going to get? And is that actually going to be super beneficial for your business in terms of streamlining things? So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also a fine line between how much do you want to automate and how much do you want to have that high level concierge service. I think one of the most beautiful things that you and I have worked on this year is that whole onboarding process from when I'm on the discovery, not even when I'm on the discovery call, when the client's filling out the contact form until when they're working with us. So talk about it from your perspective of like what steps happen in which order and what's most helpful for you who is more of like the strategy OBM person. Like, what's the best way to deliver that information to you? Because I feel like we've hit a good thing. And me being the creative and like throwing the ideas out there, I love our process. So I think for the people, the creatives listening, knowing that someone like you, number one, exists, and number two, can like take our spaghetti bowl of mishmash ideas and put some order around them is a really cool thing to hear. So would love to hear you kind of talk through okay, someone thinks they might want to work with us. Now what?
Definitely. So I think one of my favorite parts about that process is that you record your discovery calls and you send them to me because then I know exactly what you were thinking and what the clients heard. And what I can then do from there is build a custom proposal for the services that they need using some other tools that we've built together and for pricing and package structure. So that's one of the best things because even just reading some notes or a digest of the meeting, I tend to miss, okay, what is the purpose of this for the client? What are they looking for exactly here? And, what have we kind of told them we'll be able to do over the call? So I think that's probably the best way we've been able to pull together these really great custom quotes for our partners and get them out there quickly in like a day, a proposal in a day.
It's helped because I've talked about this on the podcast before. It's like my biggest hiccup in my onboarding process before having you on the team was that I would talk to the client and get so jazzed. I'd be so excited about their project, so excited to move forward. And then I'd sit down to make the proposal and be like, we'll do that later. Like I just like wasn't something that I felt proficient at. It wasn't something that I felt like, it's like, I got to pull all these references together. Like I'll just send it when I send it. And that lapse in timing, I think was hurting the business versus now we have, first of all, the contact form where they're giving us a good chunk of information. And there's already a stopgap there, right? Because you and I look at that together sometimes where we're like, maybe they don't have the budget. Maybe it's not a good fit. Maybe we should direct them somewhere else. So that's the first hurdle. Then we get on this call together. We talk through their project. I'm listing out a million ways that we've solved this problem before. And then I'm saying in the call, okay, here's what's going to happen next. I'm going to pass this off to Cody. She's the business manager. We're going to work together on pulling together your proposal. And I think that just talks to, again, like our level of more like concierge, hands-on service, where we're just like, not just like firing off proposals that are a one size fits all, because that's not what these brands need, really, So then listing out the projects as well. Again, you've got the recording. So I'm like, oh yeah, when we worked on so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so's project, how to link those up. And then we're coming back to the pricing matrix. And I do love that we have just another stopgap before it gets sent of sometimes you'll be like, hey, I'm thinking we could quote them this. Does that align? What's that like for you, your side?
It's one of those, I always love get a second set of eyes on anything because sometimes I've listened to the discovery call and I've read the notes about the client and I'm just kind of like, this is the perfect package for them. This is everything they'll need. This is, I think, a good quote for them based on their business size and the visibility that the project is going to get. And sometimes I just need the, yeah, that looks great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Other times, there have been a few times where I've either kind of thought it was a bigger project than it actually is, or I
Sure.
might have thought it was a smaller project than it actually is. So I love getting it that second set of eyes. And I think for clients, knowing that their proposal has gone through more than one person before it gets to them also helps them understand the value that they're getting for the deliverables that we're going to provide in the proposal.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm also introducing you really early on in the process, right? Like I'm telling them on the discovery call, like I'm not the only, like you said, I'm not the only brain on this project. And I think that being transparent about that, especially in like an agency style setting, I think a lot of entrepreneurs can fall into the trap of trying to make it look like as the owner founder, they do everything themselves. When really what I'm trying to sell is like, you're getting a lot of brains on your project. Like, because it's not just me, but it's also Cody, it's also Madison, it's also Gabby, it's also, whoever else is on the team is like really kind of showing that there's that collaborative thing. And also that when they have questions about like links to their invoices, don't message me about it. That is not my department. Like now we have you in there, right? As like someone that's just extra on top of those finer details that can get so lost in the sauce when I'm trying to like be present in the client call and do the other things. What do you feel like is one of the things that you are glad that we do now that we didn't used to do?
I think a few things that we've kind of come into over the course of this year
Yeah.
is I actually, speaking to your last point, when we were first kind of into this, when I was first starting to help you out as your OBM, I was sending emails being like, this is Michelle. And it was always hard
Uh-huh.
because I was like, we have very different tones. And it's confusing for the client to know who's the point of contact for different
Sure.
things. So I think introducing myself at the point that I send the proposal just virtually in the email has helped a lot. So that's one change I'm happy we made,
Forgot
because
about
then
that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's so much better because then I'm getting emails out faster and I'm coordinating things faster because I'm not like, oh no, do I sound like Michelle?
Right. Right.
So that's been great. And I've also loved that we got more into kind of calendar optimization and prioritization this year. Has been really helpful for our workflow. So Michelle and I meet on a weekly basis, and I'm able to see her calendar, what she's got on the docket, and then I come prepared with a list of all the client things that we have to get done this week, and we just kind of slot out the time that she's going to be
Mm-hmm.
working on it. And so there's that little bit of calendar management, but also visibility for me. So if a client asks, when am I going to see this? I can say, oh, you're going to see it on Thursday. Has just kind of helped plan and coordinate the projects to get them executed faster. I think we're delivering our services a lot faster than we were before.
Completely. And it also just speaks to like our own strengths and weaknesses, right? Like my strengths are I like variety and I like to deep dive. Like I like to just focus on something for 3 to 4 hours. And then I've always kind of been the person that like mentally kept a checklist in my head and knew like when was the last possible amount of time I had to work on it, and then like liked working under pressure. But as a leader, that doesn't really jive with everybody else's stuff, right? So you gave a really great skill share at the beginning of the year about calendar optimization, like you're talking about. And I was like, like this like would have never crossed my mind. Also because it was on the bingo card to do a skill share, which we should circle back to bingo. But talk about what are some of the things like when you're talking to that creative entrepreneur about their time management and about their calendar, what do you feel like are some consistent things that people overlook or like haven't ever really been taught, and how it could be different?
I think one of the biggest issues that I come across with creative minds is they know their list. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to actually translate that into work getting done. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a ton of lofty ideas. They just don't know how to integrate that into their day, coordinate and plan for the work to actually get done. So it can create a lot of roadblocks in terms of timing and lead to a lot of that pressure work, which I will say some level of stress and
Sure.
pressure work can really help get things across the finish line, but you don't want to constantly be living in that state. So one of the best things about about calendar optimization that I got to walk through the team with was taking that list that I know you guys already have and just pop some time to do each thing onto your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And also be realistic. Take a step back after you've planned your calendar and realize, did I make time for myself to have lunch at all this week?
Yes.
Add that in. Make sure you're adding in some breaks because we can't be productive all the time. And especially for creative entrepreneurs, creative business owners, you do need that space to be creative. So
Yeah.
make sure you're giving yourself some grace there. But definitely when there does need to be deep work done, make sure that you're getting a good chunk of time on your calendar for that. And it can really just help put you in the right mindset. No notifications, no pings, no DMs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just focusing on this for the next 2 or 3 hours because I can hop back online afterwards and respond to all of those messages, but just need to stay
Mm-hmm.
focused for this block of time.
I think it's so funny too because our personalities are so different in that. And like we both kind of got into the horoscope thing. And I think I told this the last time you were on the podcast is when we did the pasta making at our team retreat. And I'm like making these noodles that are all like different sizes and different variety. And you're over here making these like perfect bow tie like noodles in perfect rows, perfectly sized. I was like, wow, if that ain't Gemini Scorpio or Gemini Virgo relationship, I don't know what is. But what does your like day look like? Because I feel like if I were, if we Freaky Friday'd, like body swapped each other, we wouldn't know how to function because I think we are just both so different in that way, which is so magical that we can work together in this way. But what is like a day in the life of Cody? What does that look like?
Definitely. So I work with, as an online business manager, I work with a couple different clients. And so how I like to organize my day is having set focus hours for each client. So typically for MKW, because you guys are based on the West Coast, I'm more on the East Coast, your hours tend to fall around lunch because it's like the start of Michelle's day, good time
Yep.
for me to hop in. So that's typically when I'm with your team, and I tend to be with the AMD team just after that, a little bit later in the afternoon. So what that leaves my morning looking like is working on my business or working on any projects that have come in, any setup projects, any automation
Sure.
projects, and just working on my own marketing, which is, obviously the first thing that gets
Yep.
bumped off my to-do
Of
list when I
course.
don't have enough time.
Of course.
That's a goal for 2025. But
But are you like a write everything down person? I know you live and die by your calendar, but I think you must also have a really great system for like knocking to-dos off, right?
Yep. So it's tends to be in my calendar. So what I'll do in
Okay.
the notes of my calendar after I've blocked things off is I will add kind of the tasks that I'm going to be knocking off during that time. So it
Mm.
does come down to, it is usually a big old written list at the end of the week, and then I just translate that into my calendar for the following week, and just kind of
Okay.
live and die by that. Sometimes when I need a little more engagement, it stays written and it's just fun to cross things off, but that's more of a mood based thing.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, I want to also shout out one of our partners here on this, which is now a sponsor of the podcast or has been for a while, which is Harvest. And we kind of brought Harvest back into the fold with what we were doing on your suggestion, really, about this calendar optimization and tracking our time. I think the feedback from business owners or from people that work on teams is that I don't want Big Brother watching me doing what I'm doing. Like, I just want to get in and do my job and like not have to be accountable for my time card. What was your recommendation, if you could take us back to that point of like how we could actually use this data to our advantage, to like actually help our team instead of kind of be this more like overarching, like kind of voyeuristic, like "Oh, you do your jobs," but more of like, how can we optimize, make everyone's life better and easier? Because I think this was one of the bigger breakthroughs we had this year.
Definitely. So, one of the things I like about Harvest in general, even if you're just using it as a time card, is it is self reported.
Hmm.
Programs that I tend to recommend staying away from in when you're working with a remote team like we do are the ones where they're tracking your mouse movements, they're tracking your
Yeah,
clicks.
forget that.
That's a step too far. You have to build a level of trust with your team. And so Harvest being self-reported does kind of, it takes away that a little bit of that layer. And one of the other things I love about Harvest, and this is the way that we've used it as a team, is it's entirely for data. We want to know how long
Hmm.
things are taking you so we know that we are pricing our services properly, providing the right quotes, but also not overburdening you with too many tasks. It's also
Yep.
entirely for resource forecasting. I don't want to tell Michelle, oh, look, you have 60 hours of work to do this week. So
Hmm.
great to know on average how long a task is going to take you for through all the steps of our branding and social projects so that we can make sure schedules are done accordingly and packages are priced appropriately.
Yeah, and that we can kick out those reports and see what is the team exertion on this project. Because obviously, I'm a full time employee of this company, Madison's full time employee, and then we have contractors too. So figuring out retroactively, like what's our actual profitability when we factor in everyone's rates, whether that's salary or hourly rate, measured against their exertion on the project, measured against what we build the client, do we still have healthy profit margin? Like, is this still a profitable business? And I think it's really easy to get lost in the sauce and see that big ticket price on the invoice, but it's something that also informed our pricing matrix, which I know we get questions about on Instagram and in the Facebook group all the time, which is figuring out like, how do you price your services when you do have a robust team that's, again, combination. It's like this, we're all remote, but everyone's kind of involved in the business differently. And you had a really good way of breaking this out in a spreadsheet. I famously don't speak spreadsheet. I don't touch them. I don't manipulate anything. I look at all the numbers and then I hire people to tell me what the numbers are trying to say. So talk to me in like kind of a almost like kindergarten level of like what the pricing matrix actually does and what information it tells you to help us better quote the projects.
Definitely. So what the pricing matrix does, so if you can visualize it with me now, it's a spreadsheet and there's a tab for each service. So each service kind of gets its own page. And what we do is we break down the steps or deliverables that go into that package. And then we break down on average how long does each team member spend on this task. And there's going to be two tables. One table is going to say, what is the cost of the team member working on this task in this project? So if someone's salaried, you can kind of do an approximation of what their hourly rate would be. Or if it's a contractor, you've got an hourly rate or a deliverable rate. So you put that into a table and then you figure out what you want to bill that time and that person's energy at for your client as you're putting the pricing together. So you figure out a billable rate. And then what I like to do is I like to do a comparison. So once you've got your billable package and your kind of cost package, you can get a better idea of where your profit margin is there. So it's really helpful to that. So data from Harvest can help inform that and kind of help make sure that you are quoting the right amount of time for different tasks. And again, it's always going to be an average because you're going to have the project that takes way longer and the project that's way faster.
Of course.
But it can really help you make sure that you're pricing your packages appropriately so you're not losing money on packages. I think we had a few where we realized, oh, we've actually dramatically underquoted. And you can also get into some kind of value-based pricing. You know, if this is a small business, how can we keep the price affordable for them so we're still making a profit and covering our costs? And then if it's as you get kind of into bigger organizations, you can adjust your pricing based on the tier of the business.
Well, and this is all data that starts to inform the sales, right? Because what we did with this pricing matrix is we had to establish what's our floor? What is the absolute, we cannot go below this number or we're going to put this business in the red. And that's really important to know because then when I'm talking to, a startup or a small business that's like, we really, really want to work with you. We only have $1,500. I can tell them like with full certainty, our team cannot afford to take on your project. I'm so sorry. And this is now your benchmark is like, you're probably looking at for a mini brand design around 7, right? But knowing where our wiggle room is so that if somebody does come through with a project that would be huge for our portfolio or it's in an industry we haven't really dabbled in yet, that we have a little bit of wiggle room. And you and I have gone back and forth on this too, right? Where it's like, hey, I know we're going to reference, you'll come back and you're like, here's the pricing that I recommend based on the pricing matrix. And I said, okay, listen, like, can we go a little bit lower? Because I think they have like a longer lifespan with us if we do a really good job. And you're like, I feel comfortable with this number, but not that number. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. But that's the putting the heads together that I think helps us also in our forecasting. So we have a whole other spreadsheet that's literally just our books and our budget. That's the difference between our pipeline and our closed business. So talk a little bit about that one. Granted, that one did come from our bookkeeper and from finance agency that helps with all of that. But again, these are like these vital metrics that tell you about like the health of the business, right?
Absolutely. And that's why it's a good idea to keep an eye on those metrics. I know a lot of businesses don't really forecast out what their expenses are going to be for the year. But if you don't do do that, you don't really know how much money you need to be making month over month in order to keep your business out of the red. And
Mhm.
so having that spreadsheet is great because that also, it even helps inform things like marketing. Like I can take a look at the sales forecast, realize that if we don't have that many projects in the pipeline, we need to do some more marketing on social media. We need to be sharing more client work. We need to be networking. And
Mhm.
in times when the pipeline is, nice and flush for the rest of the year, that's when it's time to share more educational content,
Right.
keep the audience engaged in different ways. So it really helps inform decisions across the whole business, is just keeping a pulse on these metrics and making sure that you know what your forecast is. And for resources, for sales, for budget, it's always a good idea to kind of sit down and figure out what those numbers are going to be for the coming year.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the bigger lessons we learned this year, right? Is like we worked on a lot of really cool brands that wanted to wait until they were live for us to share about them on social media. And at first I was like, yeah, great idea. Then we can post collaboratively. We can like make it this whole marketing moment. We can really like get people exposed to the brand in a great way. And what we lost in that, which is one of my bigger takeaways, is like we lost some of the momentum of sharing it, because although our audience doesn't know like exactly when we're working on something, like I think of the Inlight Hyperbarics project with this. We had the first discovery call with them in September 2023 or
Yep.
2022, like so long ago, so long
Yep.
ago. They weren't ready to move forward. Then we talked to them again in like April 2024 was the second discovery call. Then we start off their project in July to give them assets over in August to then now be posting about them in October. That is such a long relationship, which I'm grateful for, but it's crazy because it's so different than it was when it was 2020 and it was just me and I was working on a new brand every week and I was posting everything in real time, like everything in real time. It's just such a different pace. And I think as we grow with the type of businesses that we work with that have bigger budgets, that are more involved, that have more steps to them, we don't have that kind of like instantaneous shareability, but maybe that's for good reason. And I think that's another project that's a great case study in the follow up and
Absolutely.
wait, you know?
Yep, absolutely. I think once we wrap up a branding project, and one thing that I'm really happy we started implementing more this year is additional services, because
Mhm.
branding gets you, like you like to say, all of the ingredients in your kitchen so that they can cook, but they might not want to cook. They might want
Yep.
you to pull some more things together. So the follow up, the upsell, but also just figuring out the balance between how much do you follow up before you're bothering them a little bit too much and they've got to kind of come back to you. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, but at the end of the day, we've been seeing great response from clients continuing to come back for additional services now that their branding's ready and they're out in the world.
Well, and it's a hefty investment, right? Like sometimes people need that extra time. They need the time to be like, okay, I was interested. I'm not ready right now, but I've heard so many times on discovery calls, I'm saving all my pennies until I can work with you. Great. Cool. When can we follow up with you? When can we circle back? Because we'd love to do this. You know what I mean? But it's like, I think that puts us in a really nice position of not like begging for the work or forcing the work, but being like, hey, we're here when you need us. And if you don't, that's totally fine. Like, you know where to find us, etc. But yeah, the additional services have been great this year for us, because once that client's in the first gate, right? And I say this on the discovery call too. It's like once you've worked with us, you kind of get access to like our secret menu or our a la carte or any way that you want us to support you visually. Like we can pretty much come up with a solution for it. And you are so fast with the response. Some days I'm like, oh my gosh, she already sent a proposal for that. Like, amazing. Because the client's like, oh yeah, maybe I think I might want you to do XYZ thing. And Cody's like, yep, no problem. Here you go. And I was like, wow. It's just like, and we're like closing new business. And I'm just like, I was out for an hour. Like, we have all this new work. I'm like, this is great. But I think that's part and due to like, you're plugged in. You're also helping on a weekly basis while the projects are in progress. And I think having those is really helpful. So talk to us about what you do when you send out updates on Fridays.
Absolutely. So yeah, on Fridays, I just send a recap, just a little touch point for clients to let them know what we've been working on this week, what we're going to be working on next week, and just to let them know a little status update, so they know we're working on something. They just might not need to give input yet. They might not
Mhm.
need to review anything yet, but I think it helps kind of bring them along for the ride a little bit better and keep them more involved. So that's been great. And it also helps me keep a pulse on, again, where those projects are at, so I can forecast out, do some resource forecasting, because your time is probably one of the most valuable resources in the company, the team's time, your time. So knowing where each project is at the end of every week just helps me let you guys know what you're working on next week, helps me know when we might be able to start a new project, because I think that's a big one too. As I'm sending out these proposals, I'm also sending out suggested start dates, and really important for me to know where you're at with the work we currently have and the work that's already secured before I can let someone know, yeah, we can start your project on November 1st. So.
Right. Yeah, that's a tricky thing too, because I think before I had you on, I was taking projects like based on my mood. Like I said, I ran my business on vibes for way too long. And like it got me to where I am. So like I can't hate on it too much, but like I was running on vibes. Be like, I'll just find the time to do it. Like, yeah, I'll do that, you know? And I'd always push them to the first of the month because that just like felt more professional and more like, totally. But then there were times when I was running like 6, 7 projects at once by myself and like losing my mind, like not sleeping and just not taking care of myself. And I think, again, that was kind of the come to Jesus moment of this year, was like, okay, no, like in order for me to be good at my job and have my brain firing on all cylinders, I can't not take care of myself. So like, how does this have to change? Right. And I think our whole team had that moment big time. Compared to where we were this time last year, it's night and day. It's a different business.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from 2024 is every business can benefit from operations. Even if you're a solopreneur, it can really benefit you to take a step back and take a look at the bigger picture of your business and find some ways that it can maybe work a little more efficiently, a little better for you. But realistically, what ops let you do is build the type of business that you want.
Yep.
And it's really important to do a check-in with that, because like you said, even over the course of the year, your business is completely different than it was this time last year. So it's important to take a look at that, take a look at, all your systems, all your processes, and figure out how they're benefiting you, how they're benefiting the business, and just making sure that you do have time to take a step back and take a breather when you need it. Because your business isn't going to stay constant. And that's one of the things I like about working with smaller teams is they're so agile. Something's always on the go, and it's exciting and it's engaging, and it's important to make sure that the structure of your business, the structure of your team is reflecting that properly. So it's definitely something you should kind of take a breather, get that high level view, and just make sure that your business is still working for you.
Yeah, I think another big like humbling lesson we learned this year is to like not count our chickens before they hatch. Is I think we've got these big dangly juicy carrots that are like, ooh, wouldn't you want to work on this? Like I can think about that with like, I mean, one that comes to mind is like San Diego Open, or some of the other projects that we have that are pipeline, that are proposals that we sent out, that the client tells you that they're going to pay you the sun, the earth, the moon, and the stars, and you're going to get started tomorrow and it's going to be amazing, but then can't sign a contract and can't put down an invoice. So like in those instances, or at least looking back on this whole year, where do you feel like we've like maybe just gained some experience or a little bit more knowledge in proposal versus actualized business?
I think one of the best approaches that we've gotten a little more firm in this stance is and even the wording when I send out these emails, I say the earliest we're available to start your project is date
blank.
We do take projects on a first come, first serve basis. So if you want to reserve this date, you need to get that contract signed, get that deposit paid. Otherwise, when you do sign the contract and get that deposit paid, we are going to remap your start date. If you want to sit on a proposal for 2-3 weeks, that's totally fine, but we are not going to be able to give you the start date that's 4 weeks out because somebody else scooped that up already. So I think it builds a little bit of almost that exclusivity, that excitement about, getting that project start date. And it also helps us manage your calendar a little bit better around when are these projects starting? When are they going to be the most intense? So we can kind of get a sprint schedule going on all of these projects that we're taking in, and making sure it's balanced and making sure that the client's aware that, again, if they need a little more time to figure out their budget, that's great, but we're not going to be able to turn things around on a rush for them if they're going to leave us hanging for 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Completely. I think the other thing this year that shifted was getting more into our retainer client work and creating retainer client work that felt aligned with what we knew we could deliver. Because if you remember this time last year, we had one big, huge, hefty retainer with one client. And then that went away, and then it's like, oh shit. So I think this year we did a much better job of like kind of splitting that time between retainer work and new project work, which was really important. But we've also been able to come up with a good structure. Like I think of FRG and Dental Hygiene Nation and Savvy, and now with some of the new projects coming on, of like, how do we create those workflows to deliver consistency and also make sure that the team members know what they're doing and when it's due, right? And so that we kind of have that good flow. What of that process like sticks out to you as like, okay, wow, this is really moving quite smoothly?
I think one of my favorite ways about how we start working with retainer clients is that you are heavily involved at the beginning in making sure that these accounts are up to date. They've kind of got the strategy in place, but you're also great at delegating that vision down to other members of the team. Once you've got the branding in place, Madison understands the look and feel, and now Madison's able to start cranking out some of those graphics or the smaller assets for the client. And once you know the strategy, for example, for a social client, you're able to download that to Gabby very effectively. And then Gabby can take that and run with it. So I think it's built a good team structure where people know this is my job, this is my goalpost, but they also feel a little bit empowered to kind of take more of the leadership on the account and make sure that things are getting done across the finish line, but they're doing it from your direction. And so I think that's the workflow there has been really good to kind of take on more of these clients so you can stay kind of over in the branding too for these new branding projects and just make sure that, the business keeps rolling.
Well, and to loop back to the point we made earlier, right? It's like keeping everyone in their zone of genius and making sure that people are feeling like they're doing their best work, that they have what they need to succeed, that they feel like they really can take ownership of something and not giving off the illusion that I'm doing 100% of the work, even though it's my name on the door, right? Hypothetically. So like I think about Madison with Dental Hygiene Nation and how much she's really just grown in that role because she also expressed that it was something she wanted to do more of, you know? Like we've had a really great rapport all year long with all the team members. It's like, what do you love doing and what's driving you nuts? And how do we get you to do more of the stuff that you love so that you feel excited to do your job every day and less of the stuff that's dragging you down or causing confusion or causing self-doubt or leading to burnout? And how do we mitigate that? And I think that that's what we have on this team that's particularly unique. I think it's unique. I don't know. I've never worked on another team. So maybe you have insights on that front.
I think it's actually interesting to see other teams I work with moving more in that direction. So keeping everyone, again, in that zone of genius and doing those check-ins. At the end of the day, a job is a job. There's going to be things that you don't like doing that you have to do as part of your job, but making sure that that's not becoming your whole job and making sure that you're seeing opportunities for development, for growth within your position and that you're still excited about some of the projects. Like I think one of my favorite things this year was the Dental Hygiene Nation Taylor Swift drop because that was Madison's idea, and it was I love seeing her so excited for that idea, and then she crushed it. She absolutely crushed it. So that was one of my favorite ones to watch in that regard this year. Just knowing Madison wanted to work more on merch collections and getting her to see a merch collection through from like concept to file delivery was awesome, and actually even some social support there as well. So really full circle for that one. I think has been great, and I'm seeing other teams move in that direction. Like, oh, you don't like the community management aspect of social media. Let's get someone who really likes being on there engaging with audiences, and let's keep you focused more in the strategy or more in the visual curation. So I think it's a great model, especially for agencies of this size and a little bit bigger, just kind of keeping the ball rolling. And because one person managing 6, 7, 8, 9 accounts, they're not going to be able to give the same level of attention. And
Right.
detail to every aspect of an account.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, Cody, you gave some real good insights. I feel like this is definitely going to be an episode that gets shared around a lot. I know I still send around the other one whenever I'm talking to a creative, or like I get a voice memo in the Instagram DMs. It's like, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to organize myself. Like, what do I do? And I just send them your episode. So now I can send them this episode, which is great.
Perfect.
But talk to us about the service that's kind of your intro offer. That's more of an audit, which is a great thing to do before the new year, I think. Talk to us about that one and how people could take advantage of it.
Totally. So my audit it's a 90-minute, think of it as a consultation. But what we're going to do is we're going to map out your processes. So we're going to map out your client onboarding process, your different service delivery processes. And it's a long session. It's a bit of a doozy. I'm going to have a lot of questions for you. There's also a little questionnaire right before us, so we can get more into it during the session. But after that session, you're going to get a deck with some of my recommendations on just little updates, little tweaks you could make for your services to run more smoothly. And that might include a new software that might be helpful for you, a new way of working, even potentially, depending on the level of your business, you might want some additional support. But I think, like I was saying, it's so good to have that check-in where you kind of zoom out, take a look at your business, and just make sure that your processes are still aligning to your business goals and your business style and everything that you want to accomplish for the year. So I think it's a great kind of new year spring cleaning almost for your business. Totally. So
it's a checkup. It's like going to the doctor and getting your blood work and getting your, all of your metrics. It's like, this is all information that's going to tell you the story of how this business is going. And when you have all of those things, the tools and the processes and the standard operating procedures, it just makes it so that you don't have to keep so much of your brain. For me anyway, I don't have to keep so much of the storage space in my brain for all these details, because as I've released my brain from my own to-do list, like I get to look at my calendar every day and be like, oh, what do I get to work on today? Because I haven't had to store it in my head. I actually committed it to a calendar that you can see, that the team can see, that is in accordance with our own goals and making sure projects get delivered on time. And it's crazy how much that's alleviated my own like forgetfulness or my own like sense of like panic when everything falls on the same day. It's like, oh no, I left time for this. I made time for this. And it's, gosh, what a better feeling.
Totally. It helps release that mental load that you kind of you carry around when you've got that to-do list in the back of your head. Just getting it out is absolutely so helpful. So I will be giving a little code. So anyone who listens to this episode and wants an audit, it'll be KMA 2025. We'll leave it in the notes too, but it'll give you a little 15% discount off an audit. So you can kind of start the new year on the right foot.
And your website again, and your socials for people to take advantage of this.
Totally. My website is just my name, CodyGarner-Howe.com. And my socials on Instagram and Threads, you can find me at CodyOBM. So we'll have all that notes for you. And yeah, hopefully, I think it's just something everyone can benefit from, is just, like I said, that spring cleaning. It's good to realign and kick off the new year the right way.
This is my last question. If we're recording this episode in a year from now, what do you think we're going to be looking back on and be like, wow, I'm so glad we did this?
One thing I really want to get into for 2025 is, again, I think we need to do a little bit of a reset and be like, okay, is the way we're doing things getting us to the
max
level
efficiency
of business, type of business that we want to be? And also want to get into some iteration. So starting to notice, okay, this is how the process is running. Maybe we're starting to find, okay, these are different time drains. How can we iterate on the process to keep improving it? And getting into some measurement. How are these processes in terms of time, in terms of money? How are they improving the business overall? So those are kind of the three areas that I really want to get into next year.
Yay. Ooh, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a good year. I have a good feeling about 2025. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your time, Cody. And everyone, if you love the episode, don't forget to share it with someone, post it on your stories, tag us, tag MKW Creative Code, tag Cody OBM, and reach out to Cody for some organization help. Awesome. Thanks so much, Cody.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye.